Ladies and gentlemen, today I have the pleasure to welcome Miss Kabuika Kamunga. She is originally from RDC, Congo. She is a graduate of Northwestern School of Journalism and author. One of her books is I Used to Be Afraid of Animals. But today, we're going to talk about her chronicles from a war zone. Ms. Kabuka, thank you very much for joining me under the Human Rights Tree.
Thank you so much for having me here.
You are from Congo, and you decided that you will go back and report on the war zone. But before we talk about your journey back home, I would like to know, what is your clan?
Oh, how interesting. No one has asked me that in so many years.
Yeah.
I am Mukwa Kalonji.
Okay.
The Bakwa Kalonji are among the Baluba, the Luba people, who are the most numerous people in the DRC and also the most conservative as far as their traditions and practices. It is said that you can find a Luba person in Alaska or in the North Pole, and they will still be sticking on to their traditions.
How did they end up in Central Africa? Or were they come from the Congo? How did they end up there?
You have different theory to that. According to our Luba legends, it is a man who appeared with his 7 dogs. And when the people around him asked, "Where do you come from?" he kind of pointed east towards the Lake Victoria, east towards that way. But the legend is, did he point east or did he point upward? This is one of the areas. And then you have the theory that the Bantu people basically migrated from the north, West Africa, and all the way to Central as well.
So
The
go ahead,
jury
go
is
ahead.
that because I haven't done any research, and frankly, I haven't asked the ancestors, so I should ask first before answering.
So what differentiates you from the other tribe in the Congo area?
That's a good question. One of the things is we stick to our traditions. We understand the worth of our ways, and we make sure that we find ways to apply it in our everyday lives, modern lives as well. That's one thing. So as soon as you do that, it is not so you become, what would they say? Depending on which environment you are in, you could be saying, "Oh, this person is stubborn. They don't do things like we do it around here." But it's actually keeping the values alive today and anywhere and everywhere we go. That, I think, is one of the qualities. And I'm sure there are other clans who also do that. But this is something that is very specific of the Luba. They do it, and we're not shy about it. We're not modest about it. We just do it right in your face.
I see. The Luba, are they originally from Kinshasa or other part of the country?
Oh, great question again. Very few clans are actually from Kinshasa. There are some that are with the what do they call it? Ngalima. This is the name of a chief. So very few people are from that area. Most of the population come from different areas throughout the country. So the Luba people are found in Kasai Oriental, the Eastern Kasai. They are found in Kasai. They are found in the Western Kasai. Names have changed, Province names have changed, so I'm not quite sure what the name is today. But the ones who are the Bakwa Kalonji and the Mukwa Kalonji, we come from Kasai Oriental.
Okay. Was it a empire or before the Belgian came, or there was different tribe without a political organization?
This is really interesting. There was a Luba Empire, not as famous, I guess, as the Congo Empire. However, one of the things that was very famous about the Luba people is that they did not conquer you by force. You actually ran to them and say, "Can I join, please?" Why? Simply because there was a whole system in place, a system that was full of art and culture. As a matter of fact, if you were going to be a Luba leader of any echelon, you had to also be an artist. It is part of life to see and appreciate the fullness of life. You had to be an artist. And leaders, kings, chiefs were also artists. And so by joining the Luba Empire, the Luba structure or the political structure, you're actually gaining access to all the social status, to the protocols, the way of behaving, the values, all of that you were gaining by joining it. So it was really a plus to be part of that structure.
I see. Miss Kabuika Kamunga, there is a meaning in your name?
For many years, I remember asking my mother, "What does Kabuika means?" And she didn't answer. She didn't say she didn't know. She simply didn't answer. So as a child, I kept asking. And finally, years later, and I was already in the United States, not even studying, I was working just to pay, to feed my siblings back home. And so towards the end of her life, we wrote lots of letters to each other. And she finally told me, actually, your name means, Kabuika means the one who destroys. And it all depends on how you see it. The one who destroys. I'm the destroyer of what? I like to say I am the destroyer of ignorance and negativity in order to rebuild.
Oh, wow. Were you named after your grandmother or aunt, or they just choose the name by pleasure?
Oh, that's another great question. And among the Luba people, I haven't met anyone who has chosen a name just because it was a
Yeah,
name. There was always a meaning, a relationship. And in this case, my father was married to a woman, and they both went to Belgium. My father studied medicine. He was among the first five Congolese who had to go to Belgium outside of the country in order to become a doctor. But
Okay.
while studying, his wife passed away. His wife was very well known for her generosity and just the wonderful things that she did. And when she passed away, all the children, almost all the children in my family of my generation were all named after her to honor her memory. And her name was Kabuika as well.
Oh, I see. So you were named after your former uh, father wife to honor her. Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about you. Were you born in Kinshasa, and how was your experience growing up as a young lady in Kinshasa? And tell us about your father, how the family dynamic evolved in Kinshasa growing up there.
Sure. So I was born in Kinshasa, but very soon, maybe a year later or so, my father was found a job in, how would you call it? It's the Equator region. The equator runs through Congo, the DRC. And right on the equator, there's a small town called Mbandaka. And this is where the president Mobutu asked my father to please go to Mbandaka, to the Equator region, in order to save the children. Why? Because my father was the very first pediatrician of the Congo.
I see.
So we left Kinshasa and we went to base to establish ourselves in Mbandaka. Mbandaka happens to be. I used to think as a little girl running around town on my bicycle that Mbandaka, the town of Mbandaka, was on the edge of the rainforest. Since then, I've looked at the map. Actually, Mbandaka is inside the rainforest. And the edge of town was what I was seeing within the rainforest. And so it was amazing growing up in this town full of fruits and vegetables and wild adventure that you couldn't even experience in any other city. Basically, you had to be in that in the rainforest to have this possibility. I realized that only after we left, like right for high school, we left Mbandaka and came back to Kinshasa, and I realized that my classmates didn't know half of the fruits that I knew. They didn't know that it's a fisherman who goes and gets the fish and brings it to you fresh the same day, and you decide on his way. They didn't have that experience. And I realized that telling the stories of my growing up was very important. And this is one of the main reason why I started writing children's books. And so my first book was I Used to Be Afraid of Animals, and it chronicles my experience in the rainforest growing up there.
I see. And there are a lot of criticism when it comes to Africans that travel in the diaspora. Often many Africans go to Europe or United States and get education and stay. I know your father, based on our conversation past recently. Did you ever ask him why he decided, after getting a degree in medicine, why he decided to go back?
Oh, good question. 1965, right around that time. So 1960, the Democratic Republic of Congo gains independence. The tension, the relationship between Congo and Belgium is quite tense. And by 1965 or so, I'm not sure of the exact year, there was the relationship, that tension got worse. And all the physicians who were Belgian left Congo. So under Mobutu, it was like, my goodness, what do? We need Congolese physician. And those were the first wave of trained physicians were the ones who left in 1960 to go and study abroad. Because there was not a single medical school within the country. The Belgian made sure of that. They made sure that everything was outside of the country. We take the minerals, but we refine it outside of the country. And one of the things I remember seeing when I went several years ago to Brussels, the trains pulls into the station, and what do you see? You see some kind of factory about copper, and I'm like, wait a minute, you guys don't have copper in your land, so where does the copper come from? Quite a frustrating country. A frustrating trip to take to Belgium. For me, at least, it was.
I see. We know that there are two Congos, the Congo French and the Congo Belgian, RDC Congo. Can you, for the people who don't know Africa very well, can you locate it? Can you locate RDC Congo in the map, African map, if it's possible.
Sure. So you have this amazing continent, Africa, and right at the middle of it, you have the equator running by. And in the middle of it, you also have one of the largest rainforests in the world. And right in the center, you have the Democratic Republic of Congo, also known as Congo-Kinshasa.
I see.
And along it, you have the River Congo, the mighty River Congo, only second to the Amazon. And on the other side of the River Congo, you have another country, much smaller. The DRC is the second biggest country in Africa. And then next to it, a neighbor is the Republic of Congo, also known as Congo-Brazzaville. Simply, Brazzaville and Kinshasa happen to be the world's closest capital cities. I mean, you just cross the river and there you are. You are in a different capital city. But the reason why we have two Congos, it's actually the same people. It's the Bakongo are both in Congo-Brazzaville and in Congo-Kinshasa.
Mm.
The reason why you have two separate countries is again a political scheme. So there was after the 1885 Berlin conference, where the Europeans were basically haggling to get a piece of Africa. We want this, we want that, we want this piece and that piece. And they were rushing to get, and whoever got in certain places first, got it first. So Brazza was a European explorer, was in Congo-Brazzaville, hence his name. But then he tried crossing the river Congo, and he found that, oh, Stanley was already there. So he just couldn't, he just went back in. And hence you have Congo-Brazzaville with the colonization by France, which kind of continues now. And then you have the DRC, Congo-Kinshasa, colonized by that teeny little country called Belgium.
And Stanley as an explorer, if I'm not mistaken, was working for the Belgian king, Leopold. Is Leopold the second, and Congo at certain point was his own property, private property, a state, free state. How was based on the history you hear from that time? How was the situation in Congo as a free state belonging to Leopold II, the second?
Yeah, the situation was terrible. And it's actually, I mean, everything was about making money. You are a possession of mine, and this possession has to make money. We could make money, much more money to the king and Belgium by just what was coming out of Congo. And so they were enslaving the population to produce more rubber, to produce more of different items that they deemed to be precious. And if you didn't produce to that the amount, to the quota that was expected, you would get your hand cut. So many Congolese folks of that period of time got amputated left and right, nonstop. And when the story broke out, I think it was a journalist who covered it. And so the Belgian population became aware of it. They said, oh my gosh, this is horrible. This is actually looking really bad to us. This is our king doing, we have to, and basically the country took the private property away from the king by force.
I see. And it was like a Belgian colony.
And it became a Belgian colony. Yes.
I see.
Not the best colonization either, but yeah.
At least there was little improvement, or it was not the case.
Let me give an analogy. when you talk about racism today, it looks very much different than racism back in the 60s. In the 60s, it was right there in your face. While racism today very much exists, but it is more under the surface. But you still feel the effect of it just as much, or something like that.
I see. Eventually, Congo obtained its independence in the 1960s.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that period of Congo? How did they, how was the political movements? How did they end up obtaining independence?
It was quite an interesting period of time. Here you have you have Congo, this huge, humongous powerhouse of a country with minerals coming out of it nonstop. I mean, there was no way to say, okay, this is endless. This is keep on coming. This is wonderful. This is feeding us, Belgium, which is 80 times smaller than Congo, feeding it and fueling it. Because remember, like in the 50s or so, Belgium was in very dire state. The economical system there was just collapsing. And here you have this colony bringing so much wealth to you and reboosting the Belgian economy. In that state of mind, you start hearing of people speaking up, Congolese speaking up, and you're like, wait, they can't speak up. We're good. We have a good king, the King Baudouin. He has that image of good, young, good looking, compared to his parents, that he's certainly looked much kinder and so forth. But then you have more and more people coming and speaking to it. There are two stories. There's the story of the ones that is in the history books, where you have people like Patrice Lumumba speaking up more, and then you have his colleagues also speaking up, to the point where it's like, oh, we can't really start, we can't avoid them anymore. But you have another story that is actually not so much told, and yet that is the incident on the ground that forced the hand of the Belgium to actually bring Patrice Lumumba and all his compatriots to the round table and talk about independence. That incident, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I would love to I would love to hear the untold story.
That incident was a football game.
Oh,
The
okay.
real football, that is.
Okay.
There was a
Soccer in America.
Yeah, but
Okay.
the real football. And so you have this football game when you have a Congolese playing against the Belgians, and the arbitre, and I'm switching to French. The referee
Okay.
totally sides with the Belgians, and the team, the Congolese team was much stronger, ends up losing
the game.
the game.
Okay.
They are totally pissed off. They were like, what? What? So combined with that, and there was something else politically happening where they were telling you the prime minister of Belgium, an economist who saved Belgium from disaster, an economist who just gave his answer back to all the compatriots, the elite, saying, no, we're not giving you independence. So that came at the same time. You have, we lost this game that we know we're much stronger than you, and you're telling us we're not giving you independence. That was the fire. So they went from that game, they started walking around the city, just furious. And people were like, what's going on? We lost the game. And then they decided not to give us independence. More and more people gathered together. And they walked through the city of Leopoldville, Kinshasa, the capital city, and all the way to that one area that where the Belgian kept all the ammunitions, all this is where from there they brought all the minerals, and then they brought it by train all the way to the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and shipped out. So
Belgium.
they kind of found a way there, and then they kept repeating this story. And then you have leaders in the crowd who got up and said, so tell me something. Are we Congolese? Yes or no? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Does this country belong to us, Congolese, or to someone else? No, it belongs to you. You Congolese, it belongs to you. The crowd answering the leaders. So in that case, if this country is ours and belongs to us, so what are we going to do about it now? They just, as one, they stormed through that ammunition place and just like, I mean, there was more science to it, but this is the short version that I'm telling. They stormed through it, overpowered this amazing institution that was such that was so intimidating to the population. They stormed through it and took over it. This was televised on the radio. So people listening, you had Congolese who were working in white people's houses. And so they were listening to that and say, they stormed through that institution. We have all of that institution. That means I can get hold of this house. They'll go into the
Okay.
kitchen, get a kitchen knife, come back to the living room and say to the family sitting there and listening to the radio, get out.
Oh, wow.
And all the whites that same day, the same few days, all the whites end up being outside on the street while the house workers took over the houses.
Yeah,
With this violence, this is what brought the pressure on the Belgian government to say, okay, let's talk about,
the
independence.
independence. Wow. This is at least this is the first time I hear the story. So this incident, mutiny, revolt from the people, the game, all trigger a revolt basically in the colonies, which lead to negotiations. Can you tell
Yeah.
us about the negotiations and how the leaders, the leaders, were able to um, demand and obtain independence? Mm.
So the revolt happened on January 4th, which
Okay.
is our real independence. This is when
Mm.
we decided. And the negotiation forcing the hands of the Belgian to really bring the question of independence to the table. And so they brought the head leaders of the different political parties. They flew them to Belgium because that's the only place I actually they thought you could talk about independence, to
Yeah.
bring all the leaders outside of their space and environment to Belgium to talk about it. And all the political leaders were represented, except for one, Patrice Lumumba, who at the time was in prison somewhere in Leopoldville, in Kinshasa, Leopoldville back then. The other political leaders say, we are not going to start negotiating and talking without Patrice Lumumba. They had to fly him fast from jail on the plane to Belgium so that the negotiation, the talk about independence could take place. And when they did, I mean, there were so many back end ways to try to persuade you that no, you're not ready yet for independence. You should really wait. This will be bad for this and that and that. There are so many tricky questions asked and so forth. And basically, and Patrice Lumumba got there. He said, "We want it now, and it has to be done now. We're not waiting." Um, And it was this, and that's how we came to June 30th. June 30th, which a declaration of independence was actually, I have the notes actually. It's a tiny 1 or 2 line notes from the Prime Minister of Belgium saying, we are granting you your independence. Congolese, when they see it today, they're like, wait, what? All that? You're saying it just in like one line, as if it was nothing? It was just interesting to see, to minimize what was going on. That was the political independence that we got then.
Mm.
Still have to gain our economic independence, of course.
So in June 30th, Congo, Kinshasa was officially independent. My impression is there was a sense of unity because, as you explained, Lumumba was in jail, but the other political leaders say we are not going to negotiate without him. So basically, what happened? He was the first prime minister of the country,
Yeah.
and after that, from there on until now, is a sad story to tell. Things has not been working. Can you take us on what do you think are the reason Congo is going through a part of war and have been since then?
So what I'm going to say about the 60s, because right after we declare independence, we were ransacked with people with violence on the street. So the thing is, it's not because I, Belgium, grant you your independence that I agree with it, even after writing down, yes, you are independent. No, I still want access to all the minerals and all the wealth that I've become accustomed to. And so the first thing that was done, and the violence on the street and so forth, was because you still had head of the militaries were still Belgians, and then they'll speak to their subordinate soldiers and saying, actually, and they'll say things that were totally lies and telling them, actually, Lumumba, I did it just because he wanted to get paid and so forth and so forth. And then they were like, what? The soldiers decided to storm the cities. They actually got all the way inside Lumumba's residence and talked to him and say, how can you sell us for blah, blah, blah? And then that's when Lumumba sat down with them and explained, this is a lie. This is exactly what happened. And then they were like, wait, they're playing games with us. Those games are still going on today.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about the conflict in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, you have all kind of adjective being qualification, words being used for that. Oh, it's a civil war. It is this, it is that. It is not a civil war. It is not a conflict among us. It is very much the game continuing to happen where you have multinationals backed by governments, multinationals who put pressure to make sure they have access to the minerals and continue to enrich themselves with it. One of the lines that the current president of Congo, Tshisekedi, said, we don't mind you taking our minerals. We just want you to pay for it. Right now, they're not. They are creating violence. So you have, it's next to this village, you have tons of cobalt and coltan right in that area. So you want to mine that area, but you don't want the villagers to be there. They'll be impeding into your world of what you want to do. So you cause violence. The villagers have to run away from their own home, and you have the whole space to yourself. This is how they're mining cobalt and coltan right now in the eastern part of Congo. The rest, the violence, is simply to make sure no one disturbs them while they're doing that.
So basically, we know that Congo is a rich country. So its resources are they becoming a curse in some way?
When the creator gives you talents, they are talents. It is up to us to use those talents and that wealth in a way that matters. If we do not use those talents well, other people will use us to access our wealth, which is exactly what's going on today. Going back again, with everything is in history, that's how you understand the world today. When we talk about colonization, we tend to think of political system colonizing a country, colonizing another country. There's much more to it. There's the Vatican involved in it, because with colonization, one of the first people in the field, sent to the field in Congo, were missionaries. And missionaries were there with very specific mission to erase whatever you know and put it aside and embrace what we're telling you. By erasing what you know and persuading you that everything that you know, everything that you do, all the practices, the rituals, the way you take, where you gain your strength is bad, I'm cutting your roots off and I'm making sure you are weakened. And so you can embrace only what I tell you to believe. This is the biggest mistake that we Congolese have made with colonization, is to leave what we know, our pact, our relationship with our ancestors, put it aside and embrace something new, whatever you want to call that something new, that religion that is new, that is not feeding us, that is not in strengthening us and leaving us so weak and at the mercy of anyone in any aspect of life, and whether it's economic, mining, and so forth, because that system of discerning things, you no longer have it.
So basically, what you are saying that colonization was not only political or economical domination, but was also had its mission to brainwash, to civilize, as they say, because they believe that most Africans don't have a civilization and that are more harmful to the local people than material exploitation, is what you are saying.
Absolutely. It's strategy.
Mm.
It's when you're taking your goal is to take over an area, you have to make sure you neutralize or totally destroy the people currently in that area. How do you do that? You cannot leave them with their strength. They're too strong. Um, we use traditional knowledge, ancestral knowledge of war. We had warfare and so forth. How do we cut you off where you get to the point where you believe everything we say? It will be much easier than to fight you on your ground. This is your ground. You're stronger than us. By making you believe something else, this is when we weaken you. And that's actually was a strategy to make sure that the political control, the economic control could be established. You had to cut down all the spiritual, the beliefs, anything that made the person strong had to be erased.
Let's see. Congo was independent in 1960s, and Lumumba became the first prime minister. And we know through history, he ended up being killed, and Congo was into Cold War trap, basically, and Mobutu ended up being the leader of the country for decades. How was and often Mobutu is seen as a tyrant, as somebody who took all the resources and um, and and allow corruptions, and even some people said that was the mal, the Congo was corruptions. Um, and you grew up, I think, in that regime. How was the Mobutu regime? How was growing up during Mobutu?
I have to say something.
Mhm.
Mobutu started up good. I mean, it's kind of hard to say good when you start by taking over one of your colleagues. I mean, he's the one who did the coup d'etat against Lumumba. He's not the one who killed Lumumba. Very different. He's the one who did the coup d'etat to take on that power, which was actually boosted by CIA saying, we want you to be the next leader, and we think you'll be a better match. And the CIA actually used, and very little known fact, the CIA used the trip, the US government had a program, a cultural program around the world where they sent musicians and artists all over the world to perform and share the American culture. And in that time, you had Louis Armstrong coming to Congo. And the CIA used his coming to Congo to gain into space, to get into space and gain the information of the whereabouts of Patrice Lumumba. 2 months after Louis Armstrong came to Congo, Patrice Lumumba was killed. So I almost lost the train of my thought. What was your question?
The question was to know, because there are a lot of misinformations about African leaders. Some are true, some are not. But we know that Lumumba was killed. Now, after Lumumba, the country was in the hand of Mobutu Seseko. You grew up in the time of Mobutu Sese Seko. Are they, whatever have been talked to, related to Mobutu, were they true, or there was two sides of the story? Is the where I'm getting.
Mobutu Sese Seko Kukuwengo Wazambanga. He actually wanted the country to get back to its tradition, to get back to its values, to get back to its cultures and beliefs. He stated, so he started with retour à l'authenticité, a return to authenticity. That was the movement that he started. At the same time that he was doing that, he was seeking the help of the ancestors of the Longo. How would I explain the Longo? The Longo are the heroes, the African heroes. So Patrice Lumumba, after he died, he became a Longo, a hero of an African hero. And so he asked the help of the Longos to please guide him as he brought this country back. However, the man had way too much blood. I mean, he was the one, he came with a coup d'etat, and the things that he was doing were not clean. To be able to reach, to get close to the Longo, let them come close to you, you have to be clean. They refused his help, to help him. And so Mobutu turned to the next best thing that he knew, which was the Catholic Church, and with its sect called Prima Curia. With that is back to sacrifice, blood, blah, blah, and everything. And with that also changed his way of wanting to help the country. It became more about becoming wealthy himself. And his movement, Retour à l'authenticité, became recours à l'authenticité, much less strength, much more diluted, wanting getting to things that are much more symbol like. So the men could not wear a tie nor a suit, because the suit usually wore it with a tie. The women could not wear a wig, because back then all the wigs were like white women's hair wigs, and the women could not wear pants. I actually have and living under that as a child was simply, oh, you only look at that as, oh, I can't wear pants, but all my European friends wear pants, so I want to wear pants too. So as a teenager, my sister and I, we would wear pants. And there was a story of how when we got caught by soldiers, actually you could go to jail by wearing pants. You go to prison. It was like against the law. And that the story of it, I actually told it on VH1 Behind the Music, of how by knowing the words of the Michael Jackson song Beat It by heart, we were able to get out of the situation and fake that we're foreigners and not Congolese. So that was the feeling living there under the Mobutu regime. But at the same time, there was things that were interesting. He was financing art, culture and art. So you had the different cultures from the different provinces were expressed through lavished festivals all the time. It was amazing to be able to see that. And it was a total shock after 30 years coming back to the country and not seeing that. Total shock to me. Yeah. So there was some of the good. He still wanted to do something, but he was also filling up his pocket, and he really had made a pact with the wrong folks, the Vaticans.
Eventually, I presume you left Congo. When did you leave Congo and where did you go? And what was the reason you decided to leave?
I wanted to speak English fluently.
Okay.
And I also knew that with the state of the universities in the Congo, I knew I did not want to study in Congo. I wanted to study outside. And my father at the time had quite a few business partnership, and he was like, where would you like to go? Would you like to go to London, or would you like to go to Chicago? Those are the choices that he gave me, because he knew I spoke English and I really wanted to improve it. And I said, London, it rains every day. I don't think so. I'm going to Chicago. That's how I ended up in Chicago.
So were you in love with snow and winter?
Actually, I was. I read
Okay.
a lot of books, and in those books, they talked about snow. You should have seen my face the first time I saw snow in Chicago. I was
Okay.
excited.
I see. So when did you arrive in Chicago and how was your experience arriving?
1986.
Okay.
So I ended up at DePaul University. That was a connection that we had. It was amazing. I always recommend it to anyone going to school, especially going to school to a new country, to stay in the dorms. Don't stay at
Okay.
home in your own space. Stay in the dorms, where you get to meet so many different people and you get to learn the different cultures really fast, because you're right there 24/7. And so that's what I did. And it was an amazing experience meeting so many people. It was also an amazing experience where I realized my values, my traditions were absolutely important to keep in this environment of fluctuation and nothingness, and everything goes. And that's what kept me afloat and going forward every time. So I would say it was an amazing experience to simply live through studying and learning about a country at the same time, and growing up and seeing what is it that I like really. as an adult.
So I know you went to DePaul, and after that you decided you wanted to get your master's in journalism at the Medill um, Medill School of Communication at Northwestern University. Why you choose to be a journalist? Why you didn't follow the path of your dad
Good
as a
question.
medicine?
I actually came to the United States with the thought of I am going to go to medical school
Oh, okay.
because I love medicine even
Mm,
today. I love medicine, and I want to make sure that millions of people do not suffer, uh, but really get the help they need. And that's still a passion of mine today.
mm,
Um, so DePaul, the economic system, the economic and political system in Congo collapsed. My
mm.
father ran out of money. He couldn't
Okay.
pay for my studies anymore. So I
Mm,
had to work. I had
I
to
see.
learn how to work, cleaning houses, babysitting, tutoring French. I mean, I did all kind of work just to not only make a living for myself, but also to send money
Back
back
home.
home to my 19 siblings because the economic system collapsed. They needed to eat more than once a day. So I was supporting them. And so for 10 years, I basically worked, dropped out of college, worked, and then um, several years later, I was fortunate enough to have a professor at Roosevelt University give me full scholarship, and I went back to school.
I see.
So I finished my bachelor degree in chemistry, by the way.
Mm,
I work in chemistry. I see the system, how it works, and I'm like, this is not really good. I'm actually working on a product that people consume that I know myself I wouldn't want to consume. That didn't last very long to be aware of that. And then I started to work more in the not-for-profit of environment,
organization. Mm,
working with to help African immigrants on the north side of Chicago.
mm,
And that was really fulfilling. And the interesting thing is, when I was working there, you have journalists coming in and say, we want to do a story on a new Sudanese young man. They used to call them the lost boys of Sudan. The new Sudanese young man. And then I'll be the one finding someone and then educating the journalist about the situation. And then finally, I was like, hey, instead of me telling you, informing you, educating you about it, let me just write the article. That's how it started. I started to write articles, freelancing here and there
mm.
directly. And that led me to, oh, Medill, School of Journalism. Let's just do it because I'm already doing that. That's
Yeah.
how I ended up there. It was really this passion of telling the story and not repeating the there's so much misinformation about Congo. So it was about telling the story. That's
So
why I went to
so
med
you
schools.
choose to go to um School of Communication to Northwestern, so you can be able to tell your own story. I believe. And you decided in 2023 to go back in a country that was not safe at all. Can you share the reason you decided to take that risk and go back and end up at a war zone, collecting stories and sharing them in your chronicle from a war zone? Can you tell us when did you go back and how did you get to the war zone?
Absolutely. So I work very closely with an organization that actually place teachers of transcendental meditation all over the world to help people get over their stress, to help people live more balanced lives and fuller lives. And so I'm also a teacher, a transcendental meditation teacher. And so this leader, the leader of the Organization for the Democratic Republic of Congo, asked me, would you like to go? We need to have stories out of the countries. We're not getting enough stories. Would you like to go all the way to the eastern part of the Congo to report on what's going on there? And I have to say that more than 18,000 people in the war zone area have learned this technique of transcendental meditation technique, which really is there to help them deal with the stress, whatever is going on in their lives. More on that, because I found out more about it by just going there. So I remember telling my husband and say, hey, I'm going to take 2 weeks off from work. And would you like to come with me? I want to go to the war zone. And he was like, of
This
all
is
the
not an
places,
exciting destination.
to take your vacation, you want to go to a war zone? And I was like, yeah, would you like to come with me? And he's like, I really don't want to be there, but I wouldn't want you to go alone, so I'm coming. That's how
So
we ended
in the name of love, I'm coming.
up. It was hilarious. I was like, okay, that's fine.
By the way, what was the name of the organization that sent you there? And
Um,
what is their goal and mission? Uh,
the Global Country of World Peace is one
oh,
of the
mm,
organization, Global Country of World Peace.
okay.
And so you have, and basically the goal is all over the countries,
Mm,
all of the different countries all over the world, is to make sure that people learn how to practice the technique in order to help themselves. The amazing thing is you first practice as an individual this technique of transcendental meditation, and it calms your mind, it quiets the inside, it really builds that inner peace inside you. And imagine having that in the middle of a war zone, to have that inner peace. And then from there, it influences the way you behave around you. If you're calm and peaceful inside, you will also be calm and peaceful in your interaction with the people around you. So it really helps in that. But rather than me explaining it, I would rather have the words of the people I'm interviewing
mm,
explaining it.
okay.
So my husband and I will fly. We can't even fly to Goma, which is an eastern city in the DRC. It's too dangerous. From Kinshasa, we had to fly to Kampala, the capital city of Uganda. And then
Okay.
from the capital city, we had to take a bus all the way to the border with the DRC, cross the border on foot, and then get to the place where we were going to do the interviewing.
Kampala to the border. How many hours to get there?
Good
And
question.
how was the journey?
It
Describe, because I don't think many people know.
oh
Often here we take the ground round bus and things,
yeah.
and everything is air conditioning and things. I would like you to take us to details and stories on how from Kampala you end up in the border, and how was the road, how was the people along the way. Mhm.
The road itself, the state of the road itself was pretty good.
Okay.
I don't think there was AC because you had to have the windows open. Fortunately, I was sitting next to the window and I could breathe. My
Okay.
husband was sitting next to me, so he was next to the aisle. And I remember how the longer the trip took, I think it took me 12 hours. It took
Oh, wow.
longer even than what it was expected, because
Mm.
by the time we get to the border was closed. So
Okay.
we spent the night in Uganda. And I remember my husband sitting by the aisle, and he could barely breathe because people were just piling up, standing in the aisle, and there was like no more sitting room. So people kept coming, standing in the aisle. And they also wanted to have access to the window. So they will lean in, they will lean over my husband towards the window. And my husband was like, I can't breathe, move back. They couldn't breathe either. I was just like, wow. And 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 my husband was very kind because he left me next to the window. And I remember I
Okay.
spent maybe 2 minutes. We switched space. I had to go to the bathroom and coming back, we switched space. And I was
Mm.
sitting by the aisle for like 2 minutes. I could not breathe. I was like, can I go back to the window, please? And he'd say, we had to switch back because I simply could not breathe. So imagine doing that for 12 hours.
Mm.
It was pretty intense, but still okay because we've traveled in different places and it was all right. The music in the bus was a bit too loud, but they
Mm.
were playing a lot of Congolese music, interestingly enough. And so it was all right. It's
Yeah.
when we got to the border. The
Mm.
border, I believe, closed at 6. We got to 6 p.m. We got to the border after that. We were like, what are we going to do? So
Mm.
we had, when you travel that way, especially when you're going to an area where you know there's conflicts, there's violence on the street, you have to be very aware and also have contacts all the time. People have to know where you are at all time. So we had someone who was actually an immigration officer, and he said, the border is closed. I cannot reopen it for you. You have to find a hotel. I recommend this hotel because that one has a gate in front of it. So it's more or less secure. We ended up going to that hotel. We woke up the next morning and you could feel the tension in the air. And it was like, what's going on? People talking, what's going on? About 2 miles from the hotel, there was a boarding school that got attacked. And all the girls, teenagers, all the girls got killed.
Wow.
Boys got kidnapped, probably to be enrolled in some kind of army of some kind. Three kids, about 3 kids, were able to hide. Oh, all the adults got also killed. 3 kids were able to hide somehow from that. This is what happened 2 miles away from our hotel. And that was
Oh,
not even inside the conflict zone yet.
do you have a kind of estimate number of the death?
I
And
do. I wrote it in the Chronicles from the war zone. When I write about things that are tough like this, I
okay.
quickly forget the details because,
If I
yeah,
remember back, because I read the three articles, there are three
yeah.
articles. I think there was, I believe, 25 girls, if I'm not mistaken, and boys and thing.
Mhm.
It's kind of sad. What was the reason behind? Because you come up a very, will encourage everybody to read the blog, and after that, after our conversation, I will ask you to kind of guide us on how people can read about the blog. You
Okay.
come up with myths that people need to know about the war. Can you share the myths of war? Or the first myth was the war happened over there, not here.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
That's how we hear about something bad happening somewhere, and we we come up with an excuse in our mind by saying it's happening over there, it's not happening here. So I don't know anything about the war, so I don't have to worry about it. This is the attitude, the apathy that is happening right now in the West from anyone living there, basically. Um, there's an apathy, or we don't have anything to do. It's far. It's not. It's my children at home are safe. I don't have to worry about that. And
Yeah.
yet we all do. It is affecting us. And to be plunged into this amazing trip was to relive the fact that we are all connected. The war is not happening over there, it's happening right where you are. And you are participating in it, especially when you don't know and acting. You are participating in it one way or another.
Going into those zones, you, based on your writing, you met a guide named Cloris. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about Cloris?
So Clovis is another teacher of transcendental meditation.
Okay.
He teaches in Kasindi. This is the town at the border of the DRC. And to
Mm,
get there, that was the destination I was going to. To get there, I had to fly to Uganda, take the bus all the way to the border, and then cross the border by on foot to be in Kasindi. Clovis lives in Kasindi. This is where he teaches a massive amount of people. So you have Clovis, you have Nancy, you have Bamande, three transcendental meditation teachers who are living in Kasindi and teaching thousands and thousands of people. I believe there are up to 18,000 people who have learned this technique. And so he knows the area very well. He was the one coming to pick us up from Uganda and all the way bringing us to Kasindi.
I see.
Quite an amazing gentleman.
You know, what is fascinating about your piece is often, I know, based on articles, the New York Times, the war have been lasting more than 26 years. 26 years. There are millions of people who died from the war. But in your case, and there are also horrible stories of rape, violence. But in your article, you talk about mental effect of the war. And that kind of thing is not always that story is not always told. Um, and and what I learned that meditation you were able to they were able to use meditation to overcome those crises they are facing, and PSD I think is
PTSD, traumatic stress.
PTSD. And just so I want to hear those stories. You talk to a pastor, you talk to a lady, Mother Rachel, and you talk to children. Can you tell me a little bit about those stories and how they were able to use meditation techniques to overcome the challenges they faced through going through the cycles of war?
Absolutely. One of the mission of the Global Control of World Peace, this organization that send finance teachers of transcendental meditation to go and teach in different parts of the world. And when they go and teach in parts of the world where there are conflicts, where people are running away from their home, they're the ones financing everything because the people won't be able to pay to learn the technique. And so you have thousands, I would say millions of people that who are being displaced from their villages, from their home, where the mining are coming in illegally. They are being displaced, running away from violence and going to the next big town. One of those towns is Kasindi. This is where we have so many millions of displaced women, widows, older women, children, just all kind of folks running away to simply be safe. The team of three TM teachers, transcendental meditation teachers, are there to really attend to them, teach them a technique so they can cope and start thinking. Here is an example. You have Mama Rachel. She's an older woman in her 70s who lost her adult daughter, who was a journalist, by the way. She lost it due to the war. She never said exactly what happened. And you don't even want to ask her because there is so much going on with every person you meet. And she said, when I lost my daughter, everything stopped. I had no energy, no will to live. I couldn't even walk from here to there across a room. It was just too much. Then Mama Rachel learned the technique of transcendental meditation by going inward and quietly for twice a day, for 15, 20 minutes a day. She was able to feel more peace inside, especially to her mind was able to think a little bit more and think a little bit more. She was able to see what was around her. She was able to, once you see what's around you, you're able to seize the opportunities that are around you. She decided, I am going uh, uh, to plant beans because I need to make a living. I still have children, other children. I need to make a living. And by practicing this technique of transcendental meditation, she started to have more and more energy. And the day I was interviewing her, she was moving like a powerhouse. And she said, now I have so much energy, I can walk from my home to my field and back. And I can't remember how much it was, like 16 kilometers, 8 kilometers each way, and no problem. And I work all day in my field. This is what the experience of learning a technique that balances you inside so that you can be better and have more strength, more energy, more clarity to live your life better. I also interviewed Kambali, a thin, tall young man. He had just turned 18. And Kambali he was part of a group of 6 young people who, when they heard I was coming to gather stories and interview people, they left their town of Butembo, which is a hot zone. This is like even hotter than Kasindi as far as a hot zone in the war. They left the town on 2 motorcycles, so 3 people on each motorcycle, riding the motorcycle along a forest, which is the most dangerous place you can ride because around the forest is where I don't know what you will call them, the terrorists are coming out of the woods and jumping on you. So you never know what to expect because you have the forest, they could be hiding and they come out. And along the way, they saw merchandise, trucks burned to the ground, and bodies along the ways also burned to the ground by people jumping out, terrorists jumping out of the forest to attack and then disappearing back again. They rode their motorcycle just to meet me and tell the stories. Kambale was one of them, 18, very thin, very soft-spoken, and very shy. You had to lean in and listen. And he said, I think I asked him the question of, so tell me, you learn to transcendental meditation, you learn to meditate, that how is it now that you practice the technique? And he said, now I can sleep. Before I couldn't sleep. And then he pauses and then he says, I couldn't sleep before because I saw in front of my eyes my older brother being burned. And you're like, you can't say anything. You have to let the person continue. But inside you're boiling. You're like, what did he just say? What happened? You're just like freaking out on the inside, but you can't show it because it's all about him and him telling his story that matters. And he continued, yes, and I also had lots of headaches and I didn't know what to do with my life. I couldn't function. And he had to flee the area where he lost his brother and he fled the area with his parents, and now we're living in Kasindi. And he said, since I've learned the technique of transcendental meditation, I can sleep. And he repeats that, I can sleep. She's like, major. And not only that, now I have dreams. I know that I want to finish high school, and I know that I want to do this right after. He had plans, he had dreams for his life
I see.
beyond this horror that happened. Those um those symptoms, not being able to sleep, having headaches, major headaches, those are symptoms of PTSD, where you have lived through something so horrid that the mind can't even deal with it. The body can deal with it. And next to Kambale was a young woman. Uh, uh, she had a name that I cannot remember her name, but she had a very interesting name that I had never heard before, actually. Um, Devanche or Devalanche, very different name, and very upbeat, and um, she was uh, she was just a young woman, but full of energy and full of life, and telling you,
Are
and
you
she's the one
talking
who,
about Delgance Sabuni?
what
Sabuni?
is her first name again?
Delgance.
Delgance,
Delgance. Okay.
Delgance, yes, that is
Mm,
her, Delgance.
okay.
She had a way, she's the one who explained what they went through just driving, riding their motorcycle to get to me.
Mm,
She explained what it is like to be living in the war zone every day, what it is like to be waking up and then thinking, oh, I'm hungry, I actually have to find food. But you have to go outside and get food. And when you go outside to get food, you could get food, yes, but you could also encounter death. And she tells it to you like that. Um, and she said, and she's also the one who said, before I used to have headaches nonstop. Now I do not anymore since I practice this technique of transcendental meditation. That young the group of young people, those 6 young people who came to share their stories, when they go home to Butembo, they share their stories with the people in Butembo and telling them, you also need to learn the techniques so that you can get rid of all those the headaches that you have. And I understand it's painful, but it's totally feasible. And sometimes they don't even have to tell people about it because it's the people asking them. I know before you used to have headaches. You used to come to my pharmacy all the time to buy medicine for that. Now you don't come anymore. How come? And then she'll say, I don't have headaches anymore. And then the guy was like, please tell me what you're doing because I still have headaches and I want to know how not to have headaches anymore. And more people are learning the technique simply to be able to live their life. And when you meet people in Butembo, in Kasindi, they tell you, this is our home. We're not going anywhere. This here is our home. So they should be able to live fully their lives, no matter what aggression is happening, so that they can really, really do something about
yeah.
it.
And during your journey, also, you met Bishop Salama. How was it? Your
Yeah,
meeting with Bishop Salama.
Bishop is quite a powerhouse, um, Asifue Salama in Kasindi. He knows everyone and he's very respected. He's one of the senior church leader of a church in Kasindi. And so he's the one who got the benefits from practicing, from learning and practicing the transcendental meditation technique, and has been telling people about it and saying, you really should learn about it because it's amazing. But then I asked him his personal story. How did the technique of transcendental meditation change your life? And he said, when I learned, before I learned the technique, as the leader of the church, I would be fighting with my other pastors all the time. We get money to do a project, and then we have to decide on the project to do and implement. They will be fighting all the time. And then I learned the technique. And then my pastors also learned the technique. Suddenly, now when we have to talk about implementing a project, we don't fight anymore. We just go right to it and do it and say, oh, we can do this, we can do that. And we'll find the solutions for that. It's really has, in his word, really has enhanced my professional relationship. So the church runs better, the management is better, it's much more enjoyable. But the thing that I thought was so interesting is something that he had not noticed, but his wife had noticed. So he has a much more enjoyable professional relationship at church, and then he goes home every evening, and his wife will watch him, and he said, before, when you came home, you would come with all the stress of whatever was happening outside of the house and bring it to us. I mean, it would be such a tense evening every night. But now you come home, you're peaceful, the whole household feels so much better. Whatever it is that you're doing, I want to learn that too. This is how his entire family learned the technique of transcendental meditation, because it really enhanced his personal relationship as well. And then the whole family was much more enhanced by that. So those are just in a few words from different people, the different benefits from learning this technique. So it has a mental benefit where you feel better, you're less stressed, you can think clearly, you can handle your life in a much more efficient way. It has a physiological effect as well, where you feel better, you have more energy, like Mama Rachel, you can do more things, you have more strength because your body feels better. And it has that social, that effect on the social, because your behavior changes. You're much more quiet, you're much more at peace. So the way you behave will also be that with your surrounding, and it changes your surrounding, the relationships, the social behavior totally change. The one thing we're working on, however, is that social behavior, when you have large groups of people practicing the technique, the large group of people, they change also the physical environment they are in. This is what we're aiming for, to change the physical environment in the Democratic Republic of Congo and to really create true lasting peace that goes beyond the little cessez-le-feu and the little negotiation that collapse here and there, to really create true peace for this amazing country that is the Democratic Republic of Congo.
I see. From a war zone, also you discover a second myth. War are not well organized. Was it the case?
The war is not well organized?
And doesn't have a clear purpose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's based on feeding emotions and greed, which really doesn't obey the laws of taking care, respecting human lives or nature of any kind. So when it happens, so you have people led by their feelings of greed and violence and of power, of wanting to control, they will create anything that is immediate to bring them their benefit. And so the killing of all those girls and the kidnapping of all those boys in the boarding school on the border town, on the border of Kampala and Congo was just that. It was just a show of force, violence. I mean, I'm sure they didn't even have in their mind, we're coming in and we're going to kill 3 people. No, it was just whatever was happening at the time, this is what they did. Um, totally uncontrollable. It doesn't stop neatly here. It goes and invades everything in its surrounding.
If I really hear your story, because it's kind of new to me, but through your story, my understanding is you don't believe political solutions are the only solutions, and you believe the peace is within. And the more people are uh, peaceful within, that may translate to a total peace in their environment. Is it the case?
This is what I believe. I believe that what we want to see outside has to start on the inside.
Mm.
Whether it starts with practicing a technique of transcendental meditation, for example, that allows us to be grounded in ourselves. So, in order to really maximize, optimize the resources we have, this is fantastic, which is simply what it is doing. It's really optimizing what we have and know and making use of it. Whether it is through reconnecting with our ancestors, with the knowledge, it's all happening inside. In order for it to be seen externally, it has to start inside. Yes, this is the base of it all. Otherwise, there's no stability in it. Otherwise, there's no true lasting anything good out of it. When we talk about political, what does it mean? What does it really mean? Political could be just beautiful words spoken at the next UN summit, or it could be actually something happening. Here's an example of why I take it with a grain of salt when people say political. Very recently, actually, I can give you tons of examples, but I'll just choose one or two. Very recently, there was the President Tshisekedi, the current president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, has been implacable when it comes to corruption. And he says it out loud. Corruption here does not work. And when we think of corruption, we tend to think, oh, it's just the African countries corrupting. That's not true. I have a friend who is a very successful CPA accountant in the US, and he said those little corruption that is happening on the African continent, that's nothing. The big corruptions are happening right here. You guys are talking in millions. We're talking in billions with a B. So it's like it's all about the marketing of how things are shown. So I lost my train of thought. You have to remind me what you were going to say
No,
to
it's
us.
true. I think you responded to my questions and you were providing examples
Yes.
how to back up your belief. My question will be at this
May,
point. I know
may,
you are a
may I
teacher.
give that example? I did not give that example yet.
Okay, go
May
ahead. Go ahead,
Okay.
please.
Here's an example of why I take political negotiation
Solutions. Mm,
with a grain of salt. In Congo, a lot of the minerals are being stolen. And here I'm giving the example of cobalt and coltan. And so the President Tshisekedi decided, since you're stealing it, how about we just close down the trade? Nothing comes out, and that's it. So you would think that the governments around the world, the what do you call it, the international community would agree. It's like, after all, they've been speaking up against the violence against women, the violence against the millions of people, Congolese, who have been killed, the violence against the displaced, the millions of displaced folks in the Congo. They've been speaking up about it and saying it's terrible, it's awful. The President Tshisekedi saying, we stop the trade of coltan and cobalt. Guess who are the first countries to call and say, no, you can't do that? The Western governments. Why? Because they are the ones who benefit from cobalt and coltan. You'll be paralyzing their own economy by stopping the Congolese trade of cobalt and coltan. So political words have no meaning when the true acts are not being done.
I see. Quite interesting. Transcendental meditation. I know you are a teacher. What is the method that method consists of?
It's a simple and natural technique whereby you close your eyes for 15-20 minutes, and the technique uses the nature of your mind. The nature of your mind is simply to be well. The mind, no one wants to be stressed. People want peace. They want to be feeling good. They want to be comfortable. That's the nature of the mind, to be in that state. And the technique uses the nature of the mind to bring the mind to that state twice a day, morning and at the end of the afternoon, every day. So you bring that mind to just simply be comfortable in that nature. The most amazing thing is when the mind gets into that comfortable space, and where it's basically where the thoughts disappear. So you have lots of thoughts at the surface of an ocean, lots of waves, lots of thoughts. I have to do this, I have to go shopping, and I have to do that before I go back to work at noon. And so you have lots of thoughts happening at the same time. But just meditating, practicing the technique of transcendental meditation, you have fewer thoughts, much fewer, all the time, all the way until you have no thoughts whatsoever. When you have no thoughts, your body gains tremendous rest. It releases the tension and your body gains rest. When your body releases the tension and gains rest, this is where the healing happens. And by releasing the stress, you also come out of the no thoughts zone, where you come out again and say, oh, I had no thoughts a second ago. That's interesting. Those are thoughts. And you basically go back again to that no thoughts, all the way to no thoughts whatsoever. So it's a technique that allows your mind to refine your state of mind to the point where you have no thoughts and you gain so much health from there, so much rest, that you come out of it with energy, with much more clarity, with much more intelligence. And that has been studied. More than 750 scientific studies, research have been made to really document how people feel in different fields, whether they are university students, whether they are workers in a factory, how it's benefiting them and changing the way their body feels, the way they behave with one another, the way they think also. It actually enhances the mental capacity. There was a research done very recently in a military school in the US. I can't remember which city. And in the military school, they say, okay, you're all first year freshmen. This group will learn the technique, and this group will be the control. They won't learn the technique. So this is like boot camp the first year. And the after 3 weeks of practicing this technique of transcendental meditation, the people who learned the technique were much more relaxed. They were less tense. They were doing their work better. So they were performing physically as well, much better. The other group, the control group, who did not learn the technique, but they were classmates, they were in the same class, they were like, wait, can we stop this experiment and just learn the technique? Because we can already see the effect. And they're like, no, we have to wait until the time you take the exam, the midterm exam. That's how that was the agreement. And they had to wait. And after 3 weeks, you could already see the difference. And by the time they took their test, the people who had been practicing the technique twice a day were much more relaxed going into the test to take it. So they were much more better performing. While those, it's like midterm times, you're stressed out, you're like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. They were much more stressed and they performed much lesser. And that was not just mentally, but also physically. They had to perform physically as well. The
I see.
difference was huge.
In your blog, again, Chronicles from a War Zone, you mention um, telling a story of joy, courage, and peace. How can you find joy and peace in the situation of war?
You know, it's funny. I'm a teacher of transcendental meditation myself, and I've been working like in the communication field for many years. So when I went to Congo, I myself was skeptical because I was like, oh my gosh, this is a war, so you can feel the difference. I mean, the night before I even entered the country, there was killing 2 miles away. The day I entered the country, that evening, there were gunshots that I didn't even hear. I thought they were firecrackers or something. I don't know. But there were gunshots that the displaced group of people who came to me said, those are gunshots. I mean, I was like, what? This is the environment where you're in, and you feel the tension of being in that environment, and you're like, oh my gosh, people live in this environment day in and day out. And then I spoke to the people who practice the transcendental meditation technique, and they were like, "We are living our life no matter what." They were they had energy, they had determination, they had courage. This really, by seeing them, by listening to them, and simply having this amazing honor for them to take the time to share their stories with me, I realized that they were living fully in the middle of a war zone. They were sleeping soundly in the middle of the war zone. So yes, it is possible to have joy and peace inside, no matter what's going on outside.
Miss Kabuka, uh, thank you very much for basically taking your time and taking us back to Congo from a war zone. Mm, I will ask my last questions. What did you learn during that trip? Because I feel like each experience we learn something. And what can you say to people who would love to uh, learn more about Congo and find the ways to help bring lasting peace for the people of Congo?
I learned so much from that trip. I learned from the people there that it was important to really, you don't even have to do things for people. You simply have to facilitate for them to be well enough for them to do it on their own. And they will do it even better than you can even imagine. So it's facilitating that is so important, whether it is by teaching the transcendental meditation technique to them, which is amazing, and whether it is what you can do from where you are in your apartment, in your home. And that is to begin by informing yourself. There are so many different people, different sources that you can use. One that I can think of right now is Friends of Congo. They have an amazing website where, and every year they organize Congo Week. They just organized Congo Week in October, and it's so full of information. So you have to begin by doing the work, by informing yourself. Because once you inform yourself, you open your eyes. Once you open your eyes, you cannot unsee anything anymore. And that's the thing, because we are all connected, whether you're using this, your phone, we are all connected. I bet you anything, the coltan in your phone, keeping your phone from burning out, from getting too hot, comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is very much linked with all the people being displaced so that you can continue to have coltan and a phone that doesn't burn out or explode next to your face.
Let's see. We are all connected physically, and we should be there for each other. I I will reach out again. I know you wrote a book. I used to be afraid of animals as a young girl in Congo, and I will reach out one of these days to talk about your book. Again, Ms. Kabunga, thank you very much for enlightening us about the situation, the war situation in Congo, and taking your time to share. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time to create this space to
Thank you.
talk about subjects that matter. Thank you, Alpha.
All right. Have a nice day and talk to you soon.
Okay,
Bye bye.
bye.